Hey everyone, Cody Hayes here, and welcome to part 6 looking at the Gospel of Luke. And we don't have much left. We essentially finished with the Passion narrative, so let's look here at some of the resurrection narratives. And I have here, what are you discussing? This is essentially on the road to Emmaus, and Jesus happens to encounter some individuals, talking about the events in Jerusalem. And he's like, well, what's going on? And they're like, don't you know? Jesus of Nazareth, he was executed, but we thought that he would be the one to, liberate Israel. And then they mention how, some of the women in their group went to the tomb and that, they didn't find him. And of course, they're, confused about all this. And Jesus is like, oh, don't you know how the Messiah has to suffer before he enters into his glory? And then he explains the, scriptures going back from Moses, etc. And they're fascinated by this. And they're like, well, will you stay with us for the night? And he says, sure. So he stays with him in the evening. And then there's essentially a form of the Eucharist, the breaking of the bread. And then they recognize him when that happens. And then he disappears before them. And then another point here, I'm not a spirit, I'm not a ghost, I can prove it. This is where the risen Jesus, appears before his disciples, but they, don't know if they're seeing things. They wonder if they're seeing a ghost, they're seeing a spirit. And he's like, no, I'm not a ghost, I'm not a spirit, touch me. And so they touch him, and they can tell that he is a corporeal body, a materialist body. And then he asks them, you have any food? And they have some fish. They give him some fish. He eats it. So it basically deflects the notion of a spirit. And one last bit here. There's a brief reference to the ascension in Bethany. So Luke, he provides a brief reference to the ascension in Bethany about how Jesus vanished from their sight, but he goes into more detail in the book of Acts. So we'll look at that a little bit more in the book of Acts. But that's essentially it for the Gospel of Luke. This portion didn't take too long. We just had a little bit left. So if you do have any questions, send me an email. Till then, take care.